Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pit Lane. I'm Andrew here as always with an exciting new race weekend of the future. I mean, we just saw the new 2022 cars get unveiled, and I think they look sick. They look so cool. They're super sleek. It looks like that if you could make a car look like liquid, it's the closest things could get. The rear wings are just scooped, like they have rounded curves, not nearly as angular as today's cars. And I think it's going to be really exciting next year, especially when it comes to close racing. But obviously, the new race setup or the race weekend setup that they're using. We have qualifying on Fridays. We have the sprint race with championship point implications on Saturday, and then we actually have the final race on Sunday. So honestly, I think what it is them trying to recoup some of the money from 2020, just trying to see how this race format works. Why would you not want to fully monopolize a full race weekend? Friday, Saturday, Sunday? I mean, who wouldn't want to show up for qualifying? Who wouldn't want to show up for an actual practice session and then have a sprint race shortly after? And then on Sunday you have the coup de grace with the race. So I mean, it's really interesting implications moving forward if this is going to be how Formula One does the actual format, because we have the points on Saturday, which is a huge deal. In theory, you could get the 3 points from the race for winning it, or the sprint race for winning it, 25 points for winning the actual race, and then another point for fastest lap. So you could have up to 29 points in one weekend. That could be a game changer. I mean, especially moving forward, that's how they're going to do it. You could have some of the lower level teams that are able to go flat out in the sprint race, just actually score points as they wouldn't be able to before. But I digress. Let's go ahead and get into Friday's qualifying session. So in today's broadcast, one of the things that I've really enjoyed seeing is the older drivers with some of the newer drivers, like the bromances and or mentorships that are starting to happen. I mean, you have Schumacher and Vettel. Vettel was a huge Michael Schumacher fan, and he talks about it quite avidly. And then you see him and Mick Schumacher just getting along so well. And then Alonso and George Russell, I think, is one of those little budding mentorships. And honestly, George's pace today, and we'll get to that, was amazing. Getting all the way into Q3, putting that thing firmly in P8, I believe. I believe that was the standings. Yeah, Russell in P8. What? Anyway, but the relationship that's building between Alonso and Russell, Alonso calling him a future world champion, and he is showing it. I've said it every single week, but he is putting that Williams in places it should not be. I mean, you have Latifi going out in Q1, and you have I don't understand how Russell is just all the way in P8 when your teammate is doing that bad. I mean, I think that could have really big implications on that Williams seat coming in the next year, depending on how they're doing financially. But now that they have the big money backers, I think they're going to be moving on from Latifi, unfortunately. I like Latifi. He's a good guy. He just has not put it out on the actual track. And so it's at some point you want to walk away from the money and get the results. So we'll see what happens. So Q1, right off the bat, you had the announcer saying, "Oh my God, they're just taking these corners flat out," and all of a sudden they just cut over to an onboard with Lando, and he is just Mr. in there, balls of steel, freshly getting mugged. This man is so mad at the world, and he's just taking these corners flat out, not even hitting the brake whatsoever. Lando, I hope you get the feeling better. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. The one really exciting thing, obviously, this weekend is the amount of race fans that were going to be there. It's a completely sold out weekend. It's the UK's for a second pilot weekend. Obviously, we had the other match that happened the other day with soccer, but I don't really watch soccer. So the Euros, is that what they're called? I don't know. The Heroes? I don't know. Anyway, but full capacity, you could just feel the energy in that entire place. It was great to see fans in the stands. Lewis was just out of his mind, just so hyped having everybody there. Obviously, at his one of his home tracks. George had one of his home tracks. It was just great all around. Big things from the race weekend is Ocon actually having an updated chassis, and you could see the instant performance that he got out of that. So I don't know if there was an issue with the previous chassis that just was not working, but he seemed to enjoy the new one a lot better. Moving on into Q2, actually at the end of Q1, everybody just getting in the flying laps in at the very last second just to get across the line. Super exciting way to end out Q1, but moving into Q2, unfortunately both Alpines went out in Q2. outside of that, there really wasn't any action until the end when George was able to put the race car all the way up in the P7 there for a second going into Q3. And you could just hear the crowd just go absolutely ballistic for him. So proud that he's doing what he's doing right now. And we'll see if he's going to be in Mercedes next year. I don't see how there's a way that they wouldn't do it, which could be a very interesting for Valtteri going into next year, what team he might end up with. I mean, who knows? I mean, we could see something where Aston Martin do what they did to Checo and kick him out and bring in Valtteri just to see how the team does. I mean, we'll see what the shakeup's like. It could be very interesting going in the next year. And right there at the end of Q2 as well, Lewis just throwing down a blazing lap out of nowhere, getting there in P1 in front of Verstappen, I think it was like 0.076 or like a tenth of a second. I mean, he was just throwing that car as hard as he could around those corners. But ultimately, he came out on top there in the end with pole position. But moving into Q3 there for a little bit, I mean, the action was insane there at the end. We had Lewis coming around the final corner, just barely topping Verstappen. You saw there at the end after they got out of the cars, Verstappen and Perez were talking. It's pretty clear. I think that they're having an issue with the car or just something wasn't working out and they were comparing notes. Someone said, I heard them say that they were yelling at each other. I don't think that's the case. I just think that they were trying to discuss what's going on so they can figure out the chassis setup for the sprint race coming on tomorrow, which I'm still really excited about. I know a lot of people don't like, but I'm really jacked about it. But ultimately, at the end of it, we had Lewis just coming across the line 0.075 seconds ahead of Max. So great performance from Lewis. He was jacked up by the crowd. The crowd was electric. Russell in P8 and Q3. Maybe he can get a championship point in the sprint race. Who knows? I doubt it. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a really exciting race weekend with the new sprint race and everything. But that's it for today, guys. I will see you all tomorrow. Please drop a comment, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will see you tomorrow with a race update.